of excitement, joy, and love, peace, justice, and harmony. Realizing not only that it's there, but it is surely workable. Now, we slowly approach Swedenborg and Esoteric Islam by Henry Corbin. Well, in this book, the imaginary territories are called mundus imaginalis. And in fact, they are different, of course, from the imaginary territories that I discuss. However, they are similar. And so this is interesting. One of the similar properties I noticed is with my imaginary territories, well, the beings of the imaginary territories, which in a sense are energized ideas, they interact with us, and we support them, and they support us. Well, Swedenborg also believes in this, that they, instead of supporting each other, they correspond to one another. And he emphasizes this quite a bit. Another thing that's interesting, where perhaps we start to split off a bit, is I always assumed when one encountered something spectacular from the imaginary territories, you would be conscious of it as it was happening. But this, according to Swedenborg, is often not the case. Often, when one has an encounter with the imaginary territories here according to the Esoteric Islam beliefs, one typically isn't aware of it until after it has happened. Perhaps one meets one of the hidden Aman, one of the beings from the imaginary territories. Typically, this would take the form of a beautiful young boy, but one would not be aware of it that he or she has encountered the hidden Aman until after the encounter is over. And even journeys into the imaginary territories themselves might not be realized until after it's over. For I guess at the end of such a journey, one re-enters normal space slowly and gradually. So by the time one is in normal space, one is too far from the point of the imaginary territories. Similarly, when you go into the imaginary territories, according to Esoteric Islam, by the time you realize you're in them, it's too far from the point where you entered them. So it's hard to get any kind of a group activity here, where many people could experience this all at once. Well, according to my beliefs of the imaginary territories, it is possible to get a lot of people in on it, and people can be aware of it as it is happening. A little bit of disagreement here. But anyway, because they are two different imaginary territories, of course. So they have very different properties in many ways. This book is very scholarly indeed. So, reading it, well, it's a little dry and it takes time, but there are jewels in there indeed, just as I suspected. Well, let's go off and discover some jewels as we read Swedenborg and Esoteric Islam by Henry Corbin. Now let's go to page 31, towards the bottom of the page. Angels, he writes, are not in substance except in the free sublimity of the absolute heavens, where reality is unified with the ideal. They only externalize themselves in the ecstasy they cause, and which forms a part of themselves. This concept is interesting indeed, for it emphasizes ecstasy. Well, as I said, with my imaginary territories, I often feel ecstasy too. And I feel that is a key link between me and the east side imaginary territories that I associate myself with. Now let's go to page 5 of Swedenborg and Esoteric Islam by Henry Corbin. Towards the bottom of the page. What sorority means by being beyond the mountain of Kaf is that he himself, and with him the entire theosophical tradition of Iran, represents the composite of the mystical cities of Jalabka, Jabarsa, and Herquala. Topographically, he states precisely that this region begins on the convex surface of the ninth sphere, the sphere of spheres, or the sphere that includes the whole of the cosmos. Now let's go to page 9. Towards the bottom of the page and continuing on to page 10. No, these dimensions, shapes, and colors are the proper object of imaginative perception or the psycho-spiritual sense, and that the world, fully objective and real, where everything existing in the sensory world has its analog, but not perceptible by the senses, is a world that is designated as the eighth climate. The term is sufficiently eloquent by itself, since it signifies a climate outside of climates, a place outside of places, outside of where? Na, Koja, Abad. The technical term that designates it in Arabic, alam al-mithal, can perhaps be translated by mundus archetypicus, if ambiguity is avoided, for it is the same world that serves in Arabic to designate the Platonic ideas, interpreted by a sorority in terms of Zoroastrian angelology. However, when the term refers to Platonic ideas, it is almost always accompanied by this precise qualification, moto, plural of mythal, afatunia, neurania, the Platonic archetypes of light. When the term refers to the world of the eighth climate, it designates technically, on one hand, the archetype images of individual and singular things. In this case, it relates to the eastern region of the eighth climate, the city of Jabakwa, where these images subsist, pre-existent to and ordered before the sensory world. But on the other hand, the term also relates to the Casey Waters Show. Producer, Casey Waters. Graphic editing, Judson Laird. Please note our new email address, caseywaters2@caseywaters.com.